Okay, this is my 7th legacy video, and I'm going to tell you about a vacation in the early 2000s that was so amazing that we took it twice. It was relaxing, and it was unusual, especially for Americans. But first you have to watch the animation. Okay, so we took the trips in 2002 and 2004, and at the end of the video, I will tell you about what it cost to take back then, what it would cost to take now being 2025, and just for fun, compare it to a trip to Disney World for a family of 4. I know they're very different trips, and I'll talk briefly about that at the end. Now, although these happened in the early 2000s, the genesis of this whole thing started, oddly enough, back like a lot of my stories do, a lot of my memories, when I was in the Air Force in the early 1970s. I shared an office with a lady, and we became friends. I used to babysit her kids from time to time. Anyway, when I got out of the service and moved away, and she and her family moved away, we became Christmas card friends. And she used to like to put in her Christmas cards one of those family letters, what's gone on through the year with her family. And one of the things that she wrote about was she and her husband and another couple took a trip to the United Kingdom, and they rented a narrowboat and sailed through the canals around the UK. I didn't know anything about that, and I just kind of filed it away. So I had this friend who I knew from our teenage years, and I hadn't seen him for about 25 years because I moved away right after high school for the service and for other things. After 25 years away, we moved back to where I grew up. And we caught up with Bill and hooked up and just got along real well. Our wives became very, very close friends. And we would get together, once or twice a week to go bowling, play cards, things like that. Now, Bill had wanderlust. When he was younger in college, he got to go places like Mexico and all. But when we'd get together and play cards, he'd often talk about places around the world that he wanted to travel to, maybe even live after retirement. But he never really had the opportunity. One night when we were playing cards, I mentioned the letter from Gail, my friend in Phoenix, and thought nothing of it. The next Saturday, we got together, and he said, well, guess what? He said, I've ordered a book on the canals of the United Kingdom. I went through 2,700 miles of canals and figured out which one we have to do, and this is how we're going to do it. He was also a planner. He knew where we were going to be on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. Anyway, we decided pretty much then that we would go ahead and do this trip to the UK, rent a narrowboat, and travel. Well, like I said, there are almost 3,000 miles of connected canals around England, Wales, and Scotland. And historically, they were used for trade, moving coal, things like that. Now the canals are pretty much only used for recreation. There are a lot of people who live in their canal boats, but most of them are occasional use tourists, things like that, rental boats. All of the boats are 7 feet wide, and they're up to 70 feet long. Some of them are really small, actually like little camping trailers. The one that we rented was 65 feet long and an interesting challenge for the first hour or two. When you get there to the rental place, they take you on a tour of the boat and talk to you about how to operate locks, lift bridges, how to deal with tunnels, and how to operate the boat. Boat's relatively simple, but at 65 feet long, it's just a kind of like mental challenge to take care of things like curves, going under bridges, through tunnels, and like that. Well, the canal that Bill picked out for us was from Wrenbury Mill to Llangollen and back. Now, Llangollen is spelled a little different than it sounds because it's in Wales. And from what we've been told, the LL sounds like CL in Welsh, so it's Llangollen. Now, I'll not bore you with a lot of home movies, but I just want to show you how big a 65-foot boat is that has 2 convertible sleeping areas, 1 double bed area, and 2 full bathrooms. And a kitchen, of course. One of the things we did is ate about 75% of our meals on the boat, which saves a lot of money. We tied up most nights at small towns like Whitchurch and Ellesmere and Llangollen. And sometimes we just tied up along the canal, which you could do pretty much anywhere there, and just have a night out in the country. Very relaxing. So we rented the boat on a Saturday afternoon and had to turn it in the following Saturday in the morning. Besides just cruising around and doing the locks, operating the locks, lift bridges, going under tunnels, we also went over 2 aqueducts. And the tallest of these is, well, and this is where luckily nobody watches this, and if they did, they're probably not from Wales and will correct me. We've heard several pronunciations, but this Pont Sisselcleet or something like that. I'll put that name up here too. And this is a picture of it from a distance, and this is a view of what it looks like going onto it in the Narrowboat. After we turned in the boat on Saturday afternoon, we had a chance to do normal touristy things. We went to Stonehenge, Salisbury Cathedral, and we went to London and looked around at Buckingham Palace and all those other things. We enjoyed the trip so much that 2 years later, in 2004, we returned, did the same canal, and we took 3 family members, our 2 kids and an in-law, and we really had a good time again. Just an unusual and really relaxing holiday vacation. Now, if you found this even slightly interesting and you go, gee, I wonder if I could find more about this, I invite you to look on YouTube for narrowboats. There are literally tens of thousands of videos on that are a whole lot better. And if you want, you can look for Llangollen because of the hundreds and hundreds of miles of canals. Llangollen's the one that we took, and it was very, very good. Now, one of the things I decided to do for no apparent reason, except that I don't like crowds and I don't like overspending for things. And I've been to Orlando, Florida, and there are crowds and it's expensive to do things. So I thought, wonder what would happen if I compared a trip like this to a visit to Disneyworld. So I looked back at what it cost in 2004, when we took our family, a total of 5 of us, to England to do the Narrowboat. And I don't have receipts for all that, that's too long ago. But I do remember, as a guy who watches the money, that it was around $6,200 to fly us over there, rent the Narrowboat, rent a car, all of that. Less the meals, because we were going to eat anyway, and since we were eating in the boat, it was grocery store food most of the time. And then I looked at what it would cost in 2025 to do the same thing with a family of 4. And I broke that down, including airline tickets. I thought, well, I'll pick some place in the middle of the country. So I picked Chicago and flew the family, theoretically, from Chicago to Heathrow Airport and go through the whole trip. There's some extra expenses, of course, passports, things like that. So normally you'd have some kind of a slush fund in there to be able to cover all your expenses. Then I looked at what it would cost, since I kind of theoretically planned a trip for April to England for the Narrowboat. Suppose I went to Disney World for a family of 4, and that's tougher because, well, a lot of reasons. I'll cover those as I go through the list. Well, first of all, round-trip airfare from Chicago to Orlando in the middle of April for a family of 4. If you live near Disney, of course, you don't have to pay airfare, so you can take that off. Disney World, I used their standard rate. If you live near Disney, a lot of times they have discounts. What I didn't add in are any of the line jumpers or special passes or tours or any of that. These are just the admission prices that are published. The hotel was tougher because the rates went from, like I said, $130, kind of far from Disney, to $270. And I picked a hotel that was near Disney but not on the grounds. And the reason for that is then maybe you wouldn't need a car, you could just Uber back and forth to the park. But if you were far away, you could rent a car, but then the cost of the car changes or increases the overall cost for to counter the lower hotel cost. Anyway, the total I got was $7,758, which is on paper more than the Narrowboat cruise. But if you have little kids, you can't find Mickey on a Narrowboat cruise. So this isn't really intended to be a replacement for Disney, just a way to say, you know, we've done the Disney thing, the kids are older, let's try something new. Anyway, that's it. If you clicked on this by accident, I'm sorry. There'll be another one, I promise. The next one is actually going to be, what the heck is a haddle? And thanks. Bye.